Welcome to my channel. Um, this video is really just for some friends, cousins, really just to, the assumption is that you've kind of done the due diligence on um, cryptocurrencies and you're interested in sort of one of the use cases, which is finance, decentralized finance. Um, and what that really means is it's taking traditional finance, um, lending, borrowing, swaps, derivatives, options, currencies, synthetic currencies at least, um, among other things, and it's putting it onto a blockchain to remove middlemen, to remove the overhead associated with marketing and advertising, um, to remove layers of trust so that everything, as far as the way that the contracts work, they're smart contracts essentially, on Ethereum for the most part at this point. Um, and it's moving all of those things from traditional finance onto this trustless version, um, where money moves back and forth among those different modes that I mentioned, um, where people can take part in it for the most part anonymously, and it's because it's more accessible to regular folks. And so again, DeFi is decentralized finance, and I'll kind of go through some of the things that, some of the basics, just to kind of walk through, again, borrowing, lending, swaps, yield optimization, and some derivatives. Options are also there, but we're not going to necessarily go into options. But, um, no one's really asked for this video. I think it's just might be helpful, instead of kind of going off the cuff each time anyone has a question. This is just kind of the basics. So what I have right here is DeFi Pulse, which is it's really just a place that I go to look at kind of the overall trend of DeFi and how much money is being kind of moved into this area of blockchain and cryptocurrencies. And you can see since, I don't know, 2017, for the most part, it was really quite slow. And then you could see, it's called DeFi Summer on Twitter. Money really started to flow in. The applications in DeFi, moved really from proof of concept into real actual use. You can see right now it's really about, I don't know, what is it? About 15, almost $16 billion locked up in DeFi. And total value locked isn't always the best, metric really, because it's fluid. You could lock your money up and it's not necessarily locked. You can take it back. You can move it, right? You can take it back. It's not necessarily locked like you would say, like if you were to do like a CD, a 6-month CD, where you have to wait till the 6 months is over to either roll it over or to take your money back. So I go here just to kind of look at the overall trend. Right, this is the overall. If you look at the 30-day, we're still looking at pretty good growth. It's 90-day, 1 year, again moving up pretty good. So it's really just to give you the overall flavor of like it's being tested out right now. It's there's a lot of different. You could do some Googling and find that there are smart contracts that have been exposed, not because the contracts didn't work, but because the way that the contracts were written, there were loopholes, just like in any contract that were exposed by someone who knew how to do that. So you still have to be super careful about the protocols that you're going to use, if you do use any. I've selected a few of the bigger ones across the top here that you'll see, and we'll go through a couple of those. But this isn't necessarily every single one. This isn't all of them. There's a lot more. But this gives me, when I look, I go in each day, and it gives me just a good idea of the trend. right? This is one thing that I like to look at. And if you really think about traditional finance, you know, really zooming out, Wall Street and just global finance, derivatives make up about $700 trillion, right? Derivatives is just one small part of it. Or actually, derivatives are the biggest market in the world, right? That's just a huge part. But within that, underneath that, there are different equity markets, there are different bonds and things like that. But the global economy is enormous. $15 billion is nothing. It's absolutely nothing. So there's a lot of room to grow here. Again, do your due diligence on DeFi, Ethereum. That's really this is one of the main purposes of Ethereum. The Ethereum network is DeFi. So I think that I really do think that 15-16 billion dollar number is going to be quite different in a year, 3, 4, 5 years from now. So one thing that you'd want to do is, and again, so if the Ethereum network is really where most of DeFi, decentralized finance is right now, there are different networks that are going to be coming out: Polkadot, Cosmos, Cardano. There are a couple other ghost chains that really don't have a lot of activity, but it's going to be a network, a chain of networks, a web of networks. All of them are going to interact with one another, and that's kind of exciting. So for now, we'll really just focus on Ethereum because that's where most of the applications are. And the way that I interact with Ethereum is the MetaMask wallet. That I'll just click it real quick. You can get it on any of your. You can get it. I use Brave. You could get it on Chrome. You can get it on. What else would there be? I don't. Probably Internet Explorer. Firefox is probably another one where you could probably get it. But what that wallet does is it interacts with these interfaces, these different exchanges and or just protocols, and it's easier to see when you actually use them. So the first one I'll go through is a swap. And it's a decentralized. All right, so you think about how you would buy a normal stock in traditional finance. You'd go to your TD Ameritrade or your Fidelity, and you'd look up your stock, and you'd see it, and you'd go and you'd place your order with your US dollars for that stock. And so when you place that order, there's someone on the other side who's placing an order to sell their stock. So you're the party, there's a counterparty on the other side, and you're basically either you're buying it from this other person or they're selling it to you. And I mean, I'm sure there's a lot more nuance to that in terms of the way that those exchanges, TD Ameritrade or whatever, really holds and trades those stocks in the market. But for the most part, there's a buyer and there's a seller, and then that's the way that the prices are moderated, is that it finds that middle of all the different orders, right? And there can be a spread across different exchanges and different exchanges basically, and that's called a spread, and that's what arbitrators do. For arbitrage is basically if on one exchange it's $5 and on another exchange it's $4. You buy it for $4 on one exchange and you sell it on the other exchange for $5. That's much more difficult in traditional finance because you can't send it, right? You can't send your stock from TD Ameritrade to Fidelity, but there are advanced ways if you do it across country lines, I believe. And I don't know how to do arbitrage at that from traditional finance, but I could certainly do it on this. It's just much easier on this. So the way that this works is that you're actually swapping. You're making a swap through a liquidity pool as opposed to having a counterparty, right? There's no one on the other side of it. There's actually just a pool of all the different tokens that really, all right, so I guess let's just do a quick example. So if I want to select any, basically I'm saying I want to take this token that I have and I want to swap it for something else. Again, this is called Uniswap, and there are a few things you can do on Uniswap. It is a decentralized exchange, meaning that no one owns this, right? You can't shut it off. It's a contract that's running. It's an immutable contract that is there. It cannot be shut off unless you shut off the entire internet. And so people can interact with this contract, the protocol through different contracts by either becoming a liquidity provider, saying I want to stake, I want to take this token, and I want to become a liquidity provider for certain benefits like a yield, or you get your token, and you also a liquidity provider token to say that you have staked this token, and you're also going to get a portion of fees, which you'll see in a second when I do just a quick swap of the percentage of that pool that you own. So the fees from the swap are distributed across all of the liquidity providers according to the percentage of the allocation of the entire pool that you have. So that's one thing that you can do with this protocol. And by providing liquidity in that pool, you're allowing other people to make trades, not with each other, not with you, but with the liquidity that you've provided. And so you could go in here and you can select any token. These are the ones that I have in this wallet, right? And so I could take this ETH. ETH is a token on the Ethernet network. There are many uses for ETH. One of the main uses is for gas. It's called gas. You need to pay the miners a little bit of gas, a little bit of your ETH to make these transactions happen, right? Because this is a decentralized network, and the folks that make this network work are miners. They're running nodes. Do your due diligence on what decentralization is, but there are different nodes out there with a running copy of all of the transactions that are happening, and the miners do the work of proving out that it is actually a good, there's no double spend, all these other things that is really the purpose of all this. So you pay a little bit to the miner, and also a little bit goes to the providers, the liquidity providers. So let's say I want to buy, we'll call it, I don't know. But I'm not going to do it right now because, what the heck? We'll see what the gas is. But you could do anything, right? You could pick any of these different tokens, and right, you'd look at it and you say, there's 1,000 bajillion tokens. What kind of value? Again, you'd look at it and it's just foreign, right? There's a whole bunch of different layers of things and different use cases. Most of them are going to go to zero, right? There's different lists. If you go down to right now I have it set on the 1-inch exchange list, but you can go and you could change it to any of these lists if you go to CoinGecko. All right, accept the update. All right, and you could do synthetics SNX. You could go to True. Again, you'd have to do your due diligence, and you wouldn't just go here for no reason to make a swap. You'd know what you wanted to go and get, and you'd go here and you'd make your purchase. So if I were to take, right here, it shows the balance of ETH that I have in this account, and if I were to go to 0.05, it's going to show me the amount of synthetics that I would get for 0.05 ETH, right? And you can look at the bottom here. Very important to see is the price impact, and what that price impact it's basically what that is slippage. So if there's low liquidity in the pools, right? If there were between this pair of ETH and synthetics, there's a lot of liquidity, right? You can tell because this is a really low price impact. It's less than 0.01%, meaning that there's enough liquidity to get a good price, to get a price that isn't going, it's called slippage, right? If the higher the slippage, you're going to get, right, it's not going to be as accurate of a price that it can provide to you. You want to just keep an eye on that price impact. You can see if you were to go to view pair analytics, right? All right. So, and here's another thing: the liquidity provider fee. Like I was mentioned, if you're an LP, if you're a liquidity provider, that fee gets split across the entire pool, right? And so that's a tiny amount. But if you think, if we go back to this and we go to Uniswap, there's $1.39 billion locked up in Uniswap. That doesn't even, right? That's not even how much money flows across, like daily. If I go daily Uniswap transactions, I haven't done this before actually, but I think it's like an enormous amount of money, volume per week, right? We're talking about billions of dollars per week, right? So depending on what, right, this is a tiny transaction, but across all of the transactions, if you're a liquidity provider for some common pair, and you're providing a lot of liquidity, if you're providing a lot of equity, you're gonna get some decent fees. There are drawbacks to that. You want to go ahead and research I'm blanking, but it's a blank loss. So basically, it tries to tie a ratio. If you were to stake ETH and synthetics as liquidity, and I'll show you how to do that in the pool, it tries to tie that ratio 50-50, and if one of the prices goes up, you lose a little bit more of the other one, so it maintains the overall value. And that, again, do your due diligence on just what the background is on that. But that's a swap, right? You can just swap one thing. You say, you do some research. You're on, wherever you do your research to understand things that are going on, and you see something that you like. This is where you would go. And again, this account that I have. It's not know your customer. It's not, my ID isn't associated with this account, right? This is a decentralized, anonymous exchange, right? It is an taxable event, but again, all I'll say is it's not associated with my name, right? So this is where I would make that. So if I were to go ahead and swap that, might as well just try it, depending on what the gas fee is. All right, so it tells you what the gas fee is. It's $8 to do this transaction. I'm not going to do it because it's basically, 20% of the overall transaction, so it's just not worth it. If I were to go ahead and confirm that, it would do your transaction, and your swap would go. The swap would go through, and I would end up with 6 synthetics, which again, you could do many different things with it. That's a basic swap, right? The next thing is for Uniswap is the pool. Again, liquidity pools. So if you want to be an LP, which is basically the reason why you would ever want to do that is, let's say you're just getting started, you're learning a little bit about it, and you own some ETH tokens, right? And you think that ETH tokens are you don't want it to just sit in your wallet. You want to put it to work, right? And again, this is decentralized finance. You are actively taking your equity, your assets, and you're putting it all to work for some sort of yield, some earnings. Instead of you could just sit on it, certainly. And it's not like regular stocks where you buy a stock so that the value just goes up, and at some point you sell it, you cash out. The whole notion here is that you buy valuable assets that you want to hold forever, and you'll earn a yield on the value, right? The value will continue to rise potentially, or you could something that has an inherent value where maybe it's a stable coin and and research stablecoins. Stablecoins are pegged, whether they're pegged to $1 or they're pegged to some other asset. They're not going to they're going to fluctuate within 1 to 2% up and down, and there's value to be gained there. But also, it's stable, right? And you can take that and provide liquidity for those kind of swaps, and you'll earn a yield on something that doesn't move. And that's a strategy, a tactic, I guess. So what you could do is you could add liquidity, right? I go add liquidity, and what I'm doing is I'm going to create a pair. So if I want to create a pair of ETH, and I want to pair it with a true token, for example, right? Let's say I want to drop all my ETH in there, right? It's a tiny share of this pool, right? Let's really just do. It's because this is the minimum here. I would take this amount of ETH with this amount of true, and I would provide it to that pair's pool, and that would allow someone to come in, maybe across the world, that wants to buy true with ETH. It gives them the flexibility to that pair. The more people that are in this liquidity pool, the lower that slippage, right? When you're doing that unit, the pure swap, the slippage comes down, and I would get a part of that pool again. It's a small piece because this is I would assume this is a fairly large pool, right? So that's one way. Now, if I did this, if I supplied this, what I would get back in my wallet is an LP token. I'm a liquidity provider of ETH and True, and I would have that token. I could return that token for my ETH and my True. It would come back to me, right? Over time, I would get fees of ETH. I would earn from the fees on the swap side of this. But again, that's another tactic. You can do all sorts of things with these tokens, right? So that's Uniswap. Uniswap is the most popular interface in DeFi. It's very simple, right? It's the way that most people do get their tokens. If they, you start on an on-ramp like Coinbase or Gemini or whatever, BlockFi or whatever, you send it to your MetaMask wallet, right? You send it here, and then from there, you could do anything, right? You can get new tokens, you can swap them across, you can provide liquidity, right? So this is Uniswap, and I'm going to X out of that. And so beyond swaps, again, there's the next thing you could do is borrowing and lending, and these kind of things happen in finance. Just again, those core just concepts. There is traditional finance, but this is really anonymous, and it puts it back into your hands. I don't need to go through and wait 3 days for something to go from my bank to blah, 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 blah. It happens in a second, right? And so what you can, again, let's say you own ETH, you have ETH tokens, and you don't want to sell them. You think the value is going to go up, but you want to earn some interest on it. What you could do is you could deposit your ETH into, and this is Aave. This is a sort of a lending, borrowing protocol. It's fairly large, and I think there's V2 just came out. Let's make sure that continue without a wallet. V1, right? So there's $2 billion in V1. There's about 100 million in V2. All of this is going to get moved over. So I mean, again, this is fairly large amounts of money, but compared to the global economy, compared to China, it's really small. Right? Stake them and earn 8%, which is a hell of a lot more than if you were to put your money in the bank and earn 0.6%, right? I think, my generation, I'm an old millennial, we've gotten used to the idea that you just put your money in the bank and you really don't earn very much on it. And it's just easier. But no reason why you should be able to literally a small number. And that's the strategy certainly is just add a stablecoin that will go back to scale. This is guys, BCC, which is Coinbase, is 20%, right? So that's here. So when you put in my Wi-Fi, which is at this $26 coin, if I want to put in my Wi-Fi, you know it's going to go money. I'm in my 26 dollars, and I earn very much from Steve's perspective. But if I borrow some $1,000 on the my Wi-Fi, which is and I pay attention to what what I can do is I can add a stake that guy make a yield on the borrowed money, the coin on my Wi-Fi. So I'm going to borrow and show where it is. And so within my different markets in the entire world, it's not true because where is our token in the world, they're units based in the world, whether it's print for gold, cotton gold, still not gold, all those things. But that is a derivative. So you can actually pretty I'm not sure it's all first, but what you can do is you can Japanese yen on here. If I have a money, you're in Mars, a lot of the teams can't get Mars, but I don't want to keep that yen, right? You go ahead and make a strategy for you or a basket of different oil on here. There's all things you can do. I don't have different finance. I don't see right here. I don't have corn beans or anything like that, but it's pegged value on traditional finance. You can ask how that, right? You can use things of those things, principles that connect blockchain to exponential and blockchain, and so that's really really as for you.